I believe we are at about time to start taking some audience questions, but does anyone have anything that they'd like to close on as a final remark before we start going to audience questions?
I think just really quickly, from my perspective, it's interesting to hear about these ideas about what you're saying about how artists might leverage Web3 technology, because in my experience, there's actually it's a very torn feeling in the art community when it comes to NFTs and all of this, because of in the last few years, digital art being stolen and kind of minted by someone else who didn't own it, and high profile examples of that kind of shook the art community a little bit. And then there's also kind of a hesitance about NFTs because of the environmental impact of minting them. So I think, while there are artists interested in that and how they can use that technology, there is also kind of a lot of negative feeling about it in the art community, which is interesting.
Let me start to answer this question by talking about the environmental impact. Nowadays, the environmental impact, because Ethereum already merged into the POS, proof of staking. So they no longer proof of work. So the energy usage already down 95% or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's number one. Along the line, I think we should be very optimistic on the technology development itself. Okay, trust the people with the good incentive to push the technology forward as long as it has commercial value, which it has a lot. And another part for that is this is more like basically the question for that is artists has a really mixed feeling about the NFT because they worry about their work actually got stolen and then get unauthorized. By the way, this is exactly the problem that when we started to transit into e-commerce.
Right.
The traditional channel actually worry about, hey, you steal my customer, and then they denied it. But for those who actually embrace it, or probably putting the digital first approach, that will actually winning in the next cycle. I think I will actually encourage people to see in that way, because as I said, the whole NFT revolution itself, it gives you a lot of the things that are impossible for you to do. You get magnitudes more customers. Your work is being seen by multiple more people, because one part for that artist building up their name, right, is very important. Yet building up their name, they need their work to be seen by a lot of the people. You need to have engagement. You need to have your own community, right? So all of this is really, really good at building from the blockchain itself. So embrace it. And oh, by the way, there is quite a lot of studio helping artists to doing this digital transformation as well. And also, digital and the physical, they are not mutually exclusive. We have some friends actually doing a physical piece of work, but they use high resolution scanner and make it become an NFT. Whoever actually buying it, they also actually pass along the physical work as well. Or you can actually have a physical work, high resolution scanning, and then after you mint it, you destroy the physical work publicly, right? That also create a buzz. And then in that way, like your work become purely digital or digital plus a physical mirror copy. So you can use the blockchain to track the ownership and continue gain the owner, the loyalty. It's an opportunity, just to put it that way. Yeah, that's all on my end. That's all.
Thank you for that perspective. Thank you.
That's awesome. And Leo, if maybe you could share with us some of those resources. I'm sure there are a lot of creators in our audience who would be interested in hearing about that. We have a lot of really interesting questions that have come in. I don't think we'll have time to get through all of them, but one of them that came up was, what about when the prompt includes in the style of Warhol? So someone explicitly typed in something that is copyright protected. How does that play out? Maybe
It comes back to the question of genre, doesn't it? Right? Everything can become a genre in a stable diffusion world, right?
Yeah, I think that's right, is whether you're inspired by somebody or whether you're copying them. If you're inspired by somebody and you're generally painting in a style that is inspired by them, you are going to be closer to the line. But anytime you're saying you're specifically inspired by a single artist and a single artist's work, then you are at risk potentially, in all likelihood. But yeah, it boils down to that the dichotomy between expression and
that makes a lot of sense. We did get a more contentious artistic question, which I thought would be really interesting for us to address. AI models have put all art in the public domain and removed rights. It's like open source, except that even companies create proprietary code and products. For some reason, when it comes to the art space and the way art is viewed and used, art is always deemed within the public domain. Not all code is open source. Look at what is happening with GitHub Copilot and the types of discussions going on. How have artists let themselves be so reduced and impoverished on the whole when engineers as a whole and industry continue to make money?
I think the two things are fundamentally different, right? Because art is something you want people to see it before maybe they are willing to pay for it, right? The software, you don't need to let people see your code before people is willing to buy it, right? So I think their usage model is very, very different, right? Yeah, also, no, for example, if we want to do the training, using training data to train a generated AI model, right? We don't really need the original artwork. Even a photo will do, because it basically just tell you how things look like, right? We don't need to be the authentic piece there to use it as a training data. Okay, so I think it's a kind of very, very different. Okay, but artists don't need publicity, right, before people want to buy their art, and people have to look at the art. The software, you don't show the code, you just tell them the functionalities, right? And people will buy it.
I mean, I don't want to speak for Peter because someone just called him impoverished. And but in my mind, it's just another step in the kind of commoditization of information and turning of everything into bits and bytes that is information in general. If you're upset about art being turned into data that is used to create more images, don't go on Facebook, and heaven forbid if you have car insurance, because every motion that you make in a car or motion that you make in your life in terms of health insurance is being turned into bits and pieces of data that provides more information for a company to either help you create a usable insurance platform for you, or B, figure out what the best model is for the insurance company. It's happening in the art world, it's happening in the music world, it's happening in the insurance world, it's happening in the data world, it's happening on social media. It is an information economy, and now art is just part of it. That's my impression.
Sure. I mean, I think if you have kind of an attitude toward art that it shouldn't undergo all these processes, you need to really, look harder at what the role of art is in society. Creative industries continue to grow. I mean, I've got students who are interested in getting into animation and all kinds of these other things that is a huge sector. There are careers to be made and money to be made in the sphere. I think we just have to stop kind of fetishizing our idea of what an artist is, because that's what holds people back.
Interesting thought. I think this was a really interesting question too that came in, asking, almost giving the idea of a class action suit for copyright holders. So as lawyers on the panel point out, lawyers are expensive. The general impression is that copyright suits are not as rich compared to patents, but be that as it may, there clearly is strength in numbers. Most vendors from outside the US are not schooled in American style litigation, but I suspect it is much easier to settle a case with big box retailers if they are sued on hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of IP at one time. How about IP pools and use AI for monitoring, sending out cease and desist letters, and managing the contingency lawyer network worldwide? Is that a ripe business or legal opportunity?
I think you can throw AI on pretty much any legal type of industry and probably make a little bit of money now if you can do it in a good way. It's kind of the hot thing. I mean, people are already using AI to monetize brand enforcement, copyright enforcement, counterfeit enforcement. Some of the products, some of the services in this space are they're really valuable. And people who have figured it out have figured it out well. In terms of the other side, whether you can, in terms of whether you can use it in terms of a class action lawsuit, I just don't know. Class action certification is often a really high hurdle. You need to put everybody, and I'm not a class action lawyer, so I'm probably going to get it wrong, but you need to put everybody in the same boat and have them basically on all the same footing. It strikes me as that might be difficult to do in this case. But yeah, I don't know.
So it would be on an infringement by infringement basis, not just a bunch of artists saying all of our work was infringed.
Yeah, it strikes me that it would be difficult to put everybody on the same exact footing. I mean, like, right, a class action lawsuit is generally something of the sort of, you, Pepper Company, told us that it was 100% fresh ground pepper, and it's actually 98% fresh ground pepper, and every consumer experiences that kind of wrong in the same exact way. I don't know if you could do that in this case, considering that each piece of art is different. And it would be unclear how each piece of art would be incorporated after being diffused through, whatever AI code you've written into a different piece of art. That seems like it'd be pretty hard to make, but I haven't fully, that's super unbaked in this kind of jelly bean of a brain.
Yeah, I think that's right, Michael. I mean, the other thought I had in terms of what makes IP infringement somewhat difficult to do as a class action bundle is the notion of the analysis to figure out whether or not there was copying, right? So for copyright infringement, you have to look at whether there was any copying, and that test is fairly unique of an analysis. And if you have different pieces of work that you're trying to discern was there copying, the court's not going to pull all that under one umbrella, right? When you have class action suits, you tend to find them with product liability, where it's like everyone was harmed the same way, right? We all had the black pepper and had the same, problematic response. We can bundle all those together. But when you've got intellectual property rights and the analysis based on the underlying work might change, slightly, you're not going to be able to pull that in as a class action.
Very, very interesting. Well, we are at time. But thank you everyone so much for joining us. I don't know if we will get kicked off. Anyone would be welcome though to stay longer, and I will email everyone the questions. And if you are an anonymous submitter of your question, we'll either try to publish answers somewhere online for you, or you can send us an email directly, and we will try to get back to you. So we have a lot of questions, a lot of great ones, and thank you all so much for joining us today. This was a really great discussion.
Thank you guys. This was really great. Leo and Professor Yu, that was helpful.
Thanks all of you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye. I need to jump.
Bye.